Welcome to the Ecommerce Alley podcast, where we believe that great brands are built on passionate leadership, smart operations, and of course, powerful marketing. I'm your host, Josh Coffey. If you don't know me, nice to meet you. I've been helping e-commerce brands generate tens of millions of dollars in revenue through digital marketing, whether it was our team implementing that or through coaching and training for almost 10 years now. So what we're going to be talking about in this episode is email marketing. I'm going to be talking about how we add over 1,000 email subscribers a month to our clients' lists with Facebook ads. And furthermore, I'm going to teach you how to do it for cheap, where it's not crazy expensive to actually do this. And so the reason I love email marketing is because email, time and time again, if you go look at benchmarks of marketing ROI, you'll see the email is constantly that leading strategy, right? It's one of those leading things you can do. I think for ecom, the latest benchmark as of last year was 45 to 1 ROI. So for every dollar you put in, you produce $45 out. Now, I gotta be real honest, that comes out all the time and it's kind of confusing, right? You say, oh, it has a 45 to 1 ROI. Like, what the heck does that even mean? I don't know if somebody knows what that means to really tangibly tell me that, like how they gather those metrics. Because, is that factoring in like the cost of the software? Does it factor in like the labor to do that? Does it factor in like some people pay more for an agency or someone to manage their emails? So to be honest, you see those numbers, and regardless of what they are, what we do know is email has a really high return on investment for everything that we do. Whether it's 45 to 1 or 40 to 1, doesn't matter. It's real high, right? It has a high return on investment. And actually what we see is, and I'm going to give you two tangible numbers that I like to look at. I like to think of email as. And the first one is as a percentage of overall revenue. And the range that we see, for the most part, is about 20 to 30% of revenue produced by email. And I'm gonna include SMS. SMS will probably add another 10 to 15%. But email usually represents 20 to 30% of the revenue of most brands that we work with and that are in our training programs and that we work very close with over there. And so as long as it's done right, this doesn't mean like, oh, you send one email a month and then 20% of your revenue comes from that. It means you have systems in place, you have automations, you have flows, you have you're regular in sending at least 1 to 2 campaigns a week, or sending even more than that. And so that's why I wanted to kind of talk about this, because we think of list building, like building and growing our email list is often thought of in the B2B world, and it's often neglected in the e-commerce world. And so it's very, very important. I mean, you've got to think when you get to Q4, the fourth quarter of the year, when you're talking, if you're in the States, you have Black Friday, Cyber Monday, everyone, like for the most part, you have Christmas sales happening all the time. When you get to Q4, people are in buying mode. In fact, it's the largest spending quarter of the entire year for e-commerce. And some brands generate like 50% of their revenue or 30 to 40% of the revenue just in the month of November and December alone. And so because of that, when you get to those parts those key moments of the year like that, well, CPMs and cost of advertising goes up because more people are running ads and you're competing with that. But if you have an email list, you have direct access to potential buyers or people who have bought from you already. So that's why I want to talk about email. And what I want to cover are a few things. So I'm going to talk about kind of what a lead generation campaign is and what it looks like for e-commerce, because it's there are different ways you could do it. And I'm going to tell you how we see it work best. Then I'm going to walk through what you need for a lead generation campaign, like tactically, how do you set this up? Like, what are those components? And then I'll break down the campaign structure. So for all of you advertising nerds out there like me, I'm gonna give you some of the settings that we use as far as like how to structure the campaigns. Are we going CBO? Are we doing ABO? And I'll break down all of that at the end, because I know a lot of us, if it was me listening on the other end, I would be wondering like, Josh, what are some of the settings that you do? So I will break down that as well as campaign structure in the budget that we typically will allocate to lead gen. But before we do that, I want to tell you a little story. So I never understood. I always heard, I heard this really cringe-worthy saying, and maybe you've heard this. Marketers have said this for, well, at least 10 years, because that's how long I've been doing this. So I've heard this cringe-worthy phrase, and every time I hear it, I'd just be like, ugh, I'd throw up a little bit inside. And marketers would say this for years, and I don't hear it as much now, but it's still there. And that is, the money is in the list. The larger the list, the larger the revenue you'll drive in your business. So we want to have big lists. And I think the first time I heard that, I threw up a little bit in my mouth, but it kind of reminded me of, I watch a TV show, if you've never seen this, called Arrested Development, or I've seen it a couple times through. Wonderful TV show. And in Arrested Development, you have Michael Bateman playing the son, and the family owns this really big business. Well, his dad gets arrested, and all of their development basically it's has to stop because he is in prison. So anyway, that's the premise of it. But anyway, Jason Bateman, who's a son, Michael, he goes to visit his dad in prison because all the funds are on lock. They don't have money. And he's like, Dad, I need money. Like, where do we have money? And his dad would say in prison, he's visiting his dad in prison. His dad would say, well, there's always money in the banana stand, because the family had this banana stand down by the pier that they would sell these chocolate covered bananas out of. Well, anyway, his dad kept saying there's money in the banana stand. There's always money in the banana stand. And Michael didn't understand that he was speaking literally. He thought he was just like metaphorically speaking, like, oh, go grow the banana stand business. So in an act of defiance, Michael goes and he just burns down the banana stand just because he was so frustrated that his dad kept saying there's always money in the banana stand because they were broke. And so he burns it down. And then he goes back to tell his dad in prison, well, hey, you told me it was in there and I just burned it down. That should teach you a lesson. And then his dad tells him, no, the banana stand was literally lined with $250,000 in cash. And so that's how I like to think of email marketing and my story to understanding how valuable it was. Because I wasn't huge into email marketing. I knew it was valuable, but I didn't really understand how valuable until one day we had a client who had an email list of about 200,000 people, but they were only generating a few $1,000s a month from that list, right? So they had this banana stand, but they were really only living off the sales that were coming from it out the front, and they didn't realize it was lined with cash. And so I didn't either until we had this experience. And so I had this idea, and I said, hey, why don't we take some of your products, let's package and bundle them and sell them for $100, because these are worth more than that, but let's discount it, let's bundle it, and let's sell it for $100 and let's see what happens. Because they were only generating a few $1,000s per month from that email list. Like, I think the best month they had was like $10,000 on a 200,000 person email list. And this was an active list, keep in mind. And so our team developed an email marketing plan for these campaigns to run a whole promo. It was like a summer promo. I think the month was just June that we ran this. This was probably like 5 or 6 years ago. And we ran these emails throughout the whole month of June. And that 200,000 person list ended up converting 2,080 customers at $100 each. So the best month that they had with that email list was 10,000 in the past, and they generated like 3,000 to 5,000 on average per month. But we put together a promo, we had a great plan and a strategy, and we ended up generating $208,000 in 30 days from that list. And so that was my experience of realizing, like, holy crap, like, very tangibly in front of me, I have seen email line the banana stand. I have seen it in front of me. And here I thought it wasn't really that valuable. And so I tell you that because growing your email list is important. You have to grow your email list to be a more sustainable brand too. It's going to help you in those key moments of the year, but it's also going to grow your brand as a whole, make you more trustworthy, because not everybody's ready to buy from you right away. So that was my banana stand literal experience. And I want to give you some more numbers. This is actually, I ran this for a client last month, and this is a breakdown of the revenue. So a little more than $250,000 in revenue. And of that, 172,000 came from advertising between Google and Facebook. 39,600 came from email, and 23,000 came from SMS. Those are the core drivers of the revenue. So, but if you put email and SMS together, they represented, of that 267,000, they represented $62,600 of that, or 23% of their total revenue, while the ads produced 63.9% of the revenue. So if you add those together, I mean, you're talking just between ads and email, they were 86.9% of their revenue was simply from email, SMS, and advertising. So if you look at that, and here's the crazy thing, they only have an email list. They don't have a 200,000 person email list. They have a 30,000 person email list. So they don't have as many as that other client that I was telling you about, but they have 30,000 people. So if you run the math on that, they actually generated, just from email, they generated $1.30 per person from the revenue they produced from that email. From that $39.6 thousand that came from email, they generated $1.30 per person just last month. All right, so lead generation is important, even if you're in e-commerce, as being part of that full funnel strategy, because not everybody, again, is ready to buy. And if you could acquire leads for 50 cents, 60 cents, 75 cents a piece, and you know that you could be producing $1.30 a month over and over and over again, the ROI is really, really large. And what's crazy is over time, it has this compound effect. And so when I look at lead gen, here's kind of what it is from an advertising standpoint. So simply put, a lead generation campaign is a campaign that has one goal, and that is to grow your email or your SMS list. I consider that another one as well. And so if you do SMS, what I'm going to teach you in this podcast will apply the exact same. It works the exact same. All you would do is require the additional field for their phone number. And so bigger email list equals bigger revenue. And so a benchmark, and I started the benchmarks before, 20 to 30% is what we see, but another one we also see is about $1 to $4 per month per person on your email list. And so depending on how active you are in cleaning your list and how often you send emails to the list, it'll be on the higher side, but generally $1 to $4 per month. So if you have a 10,000 person list, you could typically create $10,000 to $40,000 in revenue from those people and from that database. So if you want your email list to grow every day, you could start spending anything as little as $10 a day on ads to grow that email list. And if we can spend $10 a day and we get them at $1 a piece, that's 10 people a day, 300 people per month added to your list. And then of course, if you get them for cheaper, then you could add more people. And so this campaign, when I talk about like what it actually is, this is from a Facebook advertising standpoint. We usually add over 1,000 a month to the list of clients we work with. We just try to keep that growing. But the objective that we're going to run for here, and this is some of the nerdiness, is lead generation. So what this means is we're going to be running a lead generation campaign on Facebook to cold traffic. And the lead generation campaign, if you don't know what that is, it means that when they click on your ad, it opens up a form in Facebook that allows them to fill out their information. And you could require whatever information that you want. And so they never actually leave Facebook's platform, which is wonderful because you don't lose attribution. It has accuracy because they don't leave the platform of Facebook, so you don't have to worry about the whole iOS 14 messing with any of the cookies and the tracking and things like that. And so it's very, very accurate as far as the cost per lead and how many leads you get. And so what we do is we run a lead gen form on Facebook's platform that will then integrate with our email marketing tool. And so, for example, we love Klaviyo. That is our email marketing tool and SMS marketing tool of choice. And Klaviyo natively, it will integrate with Facebook in the settings. So you could integrate your Facebook, what are called lead ads. You could integrate the form from Facebook to Klaviyo so that as soon as somebody fills out that form on Facebook's app, it will automatically shoot them into your Klaviyo account, add them as a user, and then it can enroll them, tag them, and put them into different email series. And so for as little as $10 a day, guys, you could be adding like 300, 400, 500 people per month to your email list. If you want to add 1,000 a month, on average, I would say the average we spend is about $25 a day on a campaign to end up getting to the $1,000 a month line. Or $1,000 a month, the 1,000 emails a month. That's typically what we spend. We spend $25 to $30 a day, and we could usually produce about 1,000 new people in a system from these lead gen campaigns that we run for our clients that we actually manage. And of course, we're using proven audiences. We really understand their customers. And so that's kind of what we see from a lead gen standpoint. Now, what do we need to do this? There are three things that you really need to do this well. And these are, what you want to have in place before you go just launch it. So when I talk about this campaign, you might get excited and be like, oh, let's just go launch a lead gen campaign. Don't do that until you have at least, you need at least the first and the third thing really dialed in, because you can go launch, but the thing is, if you don't have these back end pieces, you're not really going to get sales. So that said, the first thing that you need to launch a lead gen campaign is you need an offer and you need the ads. Pretty self-explanatory, right? You need to say, hey, what are those ads? And is there an offer? Now, the easiest thing that we've learned from the lead gen campaigns is to simply give them a percentage or $1 off by opting in for your products. And so the same way you would run a cold traffic campaign and say, hey, 20% off your first order. Let's say you're running something like that, or you're doing a BOGO, or if you, or maybe even on your website right now, you have a welcome offer that's like 15% off their first order, right? Start with that. Use something that you're already using. The only difference is with a lead gen campaign, you're just adding one step. Hey, before they get that offer, they have to give you their information. And that's all you're doing. And the reason we want to do this is because it makes those people that opt in, it means they would have buyer intent. Because there are a lot of ways there are a lot of offers you can make. Some people are like, oh, here's a buyer's guide, or here's a how-to tutorial, or here's an ebook, or here's like a free video training on, how to plant XYZ, whatever. And those are educational and tutorials, and those things are cool. But the thing is, people will opt into those that don't have buying intent. If someone's opting in for your products to get exclusive deals and discounts and take 20% off their first order of your t-shirts, well, they probably wouldn't opt in if they weren't interested in t-shirts, especially your style of products, in getting that discount, right? So that's what we will typically do. You can offer anything. You could do guides. I would say, if you have a product that has an educational curve to it, sometimes that is a really good thing to offer on the front end. And so we had someone in our coaching program, and she sells what, like skin, it's like skincare. It's not makeup. It's like, it was skincare, like oils and things like that. And the assists in makeup for women over 50. And so for that, she ended up coming up with this huge guide to help women over 50 with these different things. And that was really good because there's a learning curve to why they should choose her products. But by and large, we typically will just start with a percentage off or use a welcome offer that we already have if we just want to make it really, really simple. And so the first thing you need to figure out, hey, what's my offer? And make it as buyer intent as possible where they wouldn't opt in unless they were interested in buying something. And then you have to create the ads to then go with that offer, the creative and the copy. Pretty simple, right? That's thing number one. Thing number two is you have to go into Facebook's business suite and you have to create something called an instant form. All right, so if you go into business suite and you go to all tools, there's something in there called an instant form. If you go to instant forms, you'll be able to create it, and this is where you can add a headline and description. So when someone clicks on your ad, this is the form that's going to open up. And in here, we'll typically only require the fields that we will use. Meaning you could ask for any information. You can say, hey, I want your first name, your last name, your cell phone, your email, your social security, and your home address. You could ask for anything you want. The more fields you have, the less people are actually gonna fill that out, right? It's more barrier to entry. And so my advice is that you only ask for things that you are going to actually use. All right, so for example, we do not ask for last name because there is no scenario in our email marketing that we're gonna say, hey, Josh Coffee, or hey, Dylan Couts. We're not gonna actually use that as a personalization token in our marketing. It doesn't make sense. So we don't even ask for it. In many scenarios, we don't even ask for the first name because in a lot of our e-commerce email campaigns, e-commerce is different than I send emails to our list and I always include the first name. I'm like, hey, John, or hey, Susie, or hey, whatever. I always insert their first name. But for a lot of our e-commerce, we don't really do that. A lot of our stuff is more of sales all the time, showing different products that we have. We don't use that first name token very frequently, if at all. So if you use first name, then make sure that you require that. If you don't, then you could just completely exclude it. And so at minimum, we're gonna have always just email, but if we have to do first name, we'll add it. And then the third layer that we'll occasionally add, and this is dependent if you have a strategy for this, but that would be make it optional, that could be their phone number. All right, so those are the form fields we want them to fill out. And as soon as they hit submit, boom, it's gonna fire into Klaviyo, and then you can trigger any kinds of automations that you want, which leads me to thing number 3 that you need. So we need our offer and ads, we need our instant form set up, and then the third thing we need is we need an email series. And this needs to be an automation, meaning as soon as they opt in, whatever that offer is, they are now enrolled in an email series that will continue to nurture them to push them to buy over that first week. And in that first email, you really need to make sure that you present the offer that they just opted into, and then introduce them to the brand, products you sell, etc. And so what we recommend and what we do is we will make a 7 email series where they will get 1 email automatically per day for 7 days as soon as they opt in. So let's say I'm doing, hey, 20% off your first order and get exclusive access to deals and discounts. Let's say that was my promo. And by the way, your promos can be really simple. The copy of this, real simple. We have a sentence or two. I mean, this is a real short form copy. And so The first email is going to really promote the offer. It's going to break down how it works, how to use it, etc., showcase some of the product, introduce the brand. But then we're going to reiterate that offer in how to take advantage of it every day over the next 7 days. So day one, they get email, the next day they get another, and so on. And so over those 7 days, the reason we want to have this in place before we just go run the ads and start generating leads is because we need to maximize our revenue on the back end. We don't want just leads for leads' sake. We want leads that we can hopefully in the first 7 days convert into some kind of a customer right away. And so these are the 3 things that you need to launch, right? You need your offer and your ads. You need an instant form created to capture their information with the ads. And then you need an email series that will automatically nurture them, reemphasize the deal, and try to get them to become a customer over those first 7 days. And of course, they're gonna stay in your system. So they're still going to get your campaigns, and those will eventually convert people as well. All right, so that's kind of what you need before you can go launch, all right? So have those in place, but then once we have our ads, once we have our instant form, and once we have the email series ready to go, or SMS series, you can have an SMS strategy for this as well. Then the final thing is what does that campaign structure actually look like from like a Facebook standpoint? So what we're gonna do when we structure these is we'll go in and we'll create the campaign. So on the campaign level, the objective is going to be lead generation. And we will run this as a CBO campaign, so campaign budget optimization. So we use campaign budget optimization because these are not campaigns that we're going to. Usually they do really well right off the bat, and we don't have to. We're not scaling these. Like I'm not going to be scaling this like I scale my purchase campaigns, right? Purchase is priority, and so because of that, we're going to run a campaign budget optimization campaign, meaning the budget is set on the campaign level. So lead generation is the objective, set the campaign budget. And from a budgeting standpoint, we budget about 10% of our overall budget, 5 to 10%, depending on how big it is. 5 to 10% of our overall budget for advertising is in lead gen. So $100 a day, you should be spending $10 a day on your lead generation campaigns. Again, the goal is not instant sales like purchase-based campaigns and retargeting, catalog sales and things like that, right? The goal is longevity. The goal is sustainability. The goal is to build your list of potential customers that will eventually buy from you that you can also build lookalike kits on and so forth and retarget those people. So campaign budget level, 10% of the budget is what I would recommend starting with. Then on the ad set level, these are where we select our audiences. Now, what we do for audiences are we're gonna put in the audiences that we know are already proven to convert customers from our purchase-based campaigns. And so, first of all, if you have not been running purchase campaigns and you're not already doing that, don't go into lead gen yet. Lead gen is one of those things that you do after you have stability in your cold traffic purchase campaigns where we're trying to drive purchases to our stores, all right? So that needs to be in place before you do lead gen because lead gen is a long-term strategy and I want stability in orders every day from our purchase campaigns before I'm going into a longer-term strategy, all right? Great. Glad we're on the same page. So purchase campaign should be ready. So when we run our lead gen campaigns, we'll usually start with 3. You can add more and it just depends on your budget. But we'll usually start with 3 and we're gonna run to our 3 top audiences that are converting purchases for us. We're going to just hit them with a different type of ad. So if I have an audience that is 10 million people, we're driving purchase campaigns to them, but then there are those people that aren't yet ready to buy. And so we're also gonna be running lead gen campaigns to them, right? So we're gonna be growing our email list from an audience that we know already drives purchases, which means they're more likely to buy on the back end of email from our lead generation campaign, all right? So that's how we're gonna structure our audiences. And you could structure this however you want. You know, if lookalikes work for you or interests or stacked interests work for you or layered interests, whatever work for you, that's what we're putting on the ad set level. We will typically start with like 3 ads and honestly, or 3 ad sets. You could be running $100 a day in lead gen on 3 ad sets with the CBO very easily. So for most people, that will be sufficient. Now on the ad side, oh, and real quick, one final piece on the targeting in the ad sets, we're doing cold traffic. We don't run retargeting campaigns for lead gen. The cost per leads are usually really high, and just to not fatigue the audiences, we would rather them just see all of our evergreen retargeting and our catalog sale campaigns. So we don't like to fatigue our audiences with like lead gen campaigns. We actually have other retargeting campaigns for purchases going to them. The lead gen is cold traffic, all right? So this is cold. Just wanted to set that straight real quick. All right, so on the ad level now, when we're running ads, what we will typically do, and again, there's no one size fits all for Facebook ads, and I hope you know that. But what we typically do, and this is based on the budget, but what we will do is we will run this as a dynamic creative ad. So a DCA is what that's called. And we will inject 3 creatives, 3 headlines, and 3 primary text. All right, so what a dynamic creative ad means is when you're on the ad level of Facebook, it allows you to select dynamic creative ad. Toggle that on. And the reason we run this versus running them as individual ads is because we're not looking to scale this. This is not going to be, if it's 10% of your budget, we're not trying to scale here, right? Yeah, we can increase budget, that's fine. Going from like 100 to 150 is a 50% jump, but that's would represent a small percentage of what we're spending every day. We're going from $10 to $20. It's really, really small amount. So we want to have longevity in these, so we don't have to come in constantly edit these and do testing in these, because this is a small percentage of our budget. So we've run these as a dynamic creative ad. And one thing that we've just seen as a whole is that with lead generation campaigns, we've tried running single ads versus instead of a dynamic creative ad. And we have seen that just dynamic creative ads as a whole just have much lower cost per leads. So we run dynamic creative ads. And so what that means is you would plug in 3 creatives, 3 headlines, 3 primary text, and then Facebook is going to dynamically shift those around. It's gonna give all the different variations of those and put it to the people that it feels it will resonate the most with. So we're just kind of giving Facebook autonomy to change those and do those. So we're not wasting optimization time doing all that testing on our own, because again, this is such a small percentage of your budget. We don't want to waste a lot of time here, right? And so we run this as a dynamic creative ad. So campaign structure, we're running CBO on the campaign level. Lead generation is the objective. We're gonna have 3 audiences that are all cold and proven, and then we're gonna run the ads as dynamic creative ads with 3 creatives, 3 headlines, 3 primary text. And you could add more if you want, you could take away more if you want. Again, this is such a small percentage of our budget that we're not crazy worried about this, but I will say overall, our benchmark that we look for in lead gen is $1 or less. So if I launched a DCA ad and after 2 weeks, or a week, probably 2 weeks because it's a small percentage. After 2 weeks, if we're at like $3 a lead, or we're over $1, or it's like $1.50, we're gonna rework the copy, creatives, headline, and maybe even the offer. We'll just analyze it and we'll change those out, because we want sub $1 leads. So if it's $1 or lower, that's our typical benchmark. Again, for you, it might differ, but for the most part, what I see is sub $1 is pretty ideal, and it's honestly pretty attainable for the most part. All right, so that is what it kind of looks like here. So we kind of talked a little bit about, why email is important. You need it. It is part of building a sustainable brand, and it allows you to, in the most legal way, print money on demand. If you want sales, you can send an email to your list, and you will drive sales. The second thing we talked about is what a lead generation campaign is. Flat out, we're trying to grow our list, and we're running this as a lead gen objective on Facebook. But before we do that, we need to make sure that you're offering your ads figured out, your instant form created, and your email welcome series built. So that's it. Not much to it, guys. It's really not that crazy. Lead gen is often overlooked. It's one of those campaigns that very rarely, when I audit an ad account, is actually there. So that's what it looks like to build a well-rounded strategy. And all the clients we work with, we build out these different campaigns, and I tell you, one of those is a lead gen campaign. It might be a small percentage of the budget, but it helps us drive revenue over the long term and be much more sustainable. So you have been listening to the Ecommerce Alley podcast, produced by Dylan Counts. I'm Josh Coffey. Thank you for listening, for being part of this podcast, for hopefully leaving us a review if you like it. If you enjoy the content that we put out, take 30 seconds, 5 seconds, go rate it on your podcasting app. It would mean the world to us. We would appreciate it. And so thank you for listening, and we will see you in the next episode.